Welcome to the Builders Podcast. Today we have a great guest. His name is Mohammad Nafisi. I've known Mohammad for years. We'll tell you the story, how we met. We actually met, just a little hint, we met through my family, and how that all went, how he came to America. He's originally from Iran, and we talk about his schooling. He went to an academy in my hometown, another hint, and from there he went to college. He's finishing up college, but we talk a lot about startups and business, technology, things he's interested in, things I'm interested in. So it's a great conversation. Thanks for joining us. Before I introduce you, please subscribe. Please hit that thumbs up, even though you haven't seen this yet. Hit it anyway. And that bell thing, do that too, so you're notified when we have new updates, new videos posting. Anyway, I'm not going to waste any more time. Enjoy the episode. I know I did.
Hello, everybody. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Mohammad Nafisi. Mohammad and I actually know each other. It's kind of an interesting story. So I'll tell you that first, how I know him. And how I know him is actually, interestingly, through my family. He is originally from, as he'll probably tell you, he's originally from Iran and went to school in my hometown where I'm from, in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, at a academy called Wayland Academy. And my nephews also went there, and he became friends, I think, with Andrew, right? And yeah, and then basically, you stayed there during the holidays and stuff because you didn't go home, along with I hear a lot of other people, and and then I had just come back for the holidays, or I went to my family for the holidays, and here you are in my parents' living room, hanging out. This is how I remember it anyway. You're just hanging out. And I'm like, who is this guy? And you were super nice, very friendly, and very inquisitive. I remember, not a lot of people, I don't know if I ever told you this, but not a lot of people care about what Matt does. Not my family. Most of my friends don't understand what I do. My wife doesn't understand what I do. So when we first started chatting, you were so inquisitive about what I did for a living, or well, at the time I think I was working for Rapid Crush, so I was doing techie stuff. And you were asking me about what kind of programming languages I was using, and a lot of that techie stuff. And I don't know if at that point in time you really knew what you were doing and going to do with your life, but that's how I got to know you. And I love that about you. I loved how, engaging you were, and just how happy of a person you were. You're just a wonderful personality. And I laugh a lot. You laugh a lot. So that, we have that in common. So that's kind of how we got to know each other. And then after, now you're no longer in that area, but in Beaver Dam. But we, I think, reconnected on LinkedIn. I don't know if you reached out to me, I reached out to you, or saw each other, or whatever. Hopped on a Zoom call this past year, and here we are. And I see you on social media all the time. You're one of my best fans. If anyone listening to this goes to my social media feed, I bet you'll find some posts that Mohammad likes. so
Absolutely, man.
That's it. Do you want have anything to add there? I mean, we'll kind of get into your story a little bit of how you ended up in America and stuff, but is that how you remember our meeting?
Absolutely, yeah. First of all, thank you for having me today. Yeah. It's a pleasure. And yeah, as you said, your family is the reason I got to stay in U.S. because just being, from a country with really bad relationship with U.S., there were times where I couldn't go back, and staying meant I had to find families to help me and support me, and your family was just there for me, which was amazing. Like it's one of those things where like you're never gonna forget.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to see your journey and how you went from working for Rapid Crush to now having your own business. So it's been one of those, like, I guess, mentors I've looked up to. It's always great to have people like a couple of steps ahead of you
Yeah.
on the journey.
Yeah. So you're still curious. You're still following me. I know you feel like you're stalking. No. I love it. I love it. I mean, that's awesome. I'm kind of honored that, you kind of look at me that way and are kind of following my journey too. So how was that? So yes, I think a lot of people, even people that are listening to this, know that our relationship with Iran isn't like high level great. But that doesn't probably represent most of the population in Iran. I think that's more of the government and that we hear about. But how did you end up here? Is this something your family you were looking for? Well, we can talk a little bit about what Wayland Academy is, but like, how did you identify the fact that you wanted, or they were going to send you here? Is that, and how did you end up at Wayland?
That's a good question. I feel like in life overall, there's been moments where I've just made decisions off of like pure instincts, and it's crazy to look back and be like, my life would have never like been even near the same if I hadn't done that. And I feel like coming to US was one of those decisions too, where I didn't like my school back home. I didn't feel like I was fitting in, and for some years I was a good student, but then I would like skip classes, like get in trouble. And I, just knew about this thing called the internet, and really enjoyed being like connected to the rest of the world, and sort of like in my naive like teenage world, I thought there might be something out there that could get me out of this. And after a couple of years of digging, I found out about boarding schools, and that year just applied to 5 boarding schools. One of them was feasible, which was Wayland Academy.
Wow. So this was kind of an idea you were concocting. Were you did anyone tell you to do this, or you just started poking around the internet and thought, I want a better situation for myself? To kind of...
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't like much of an inspiration around because, back home, like you have an isolated country where like not a lot of people around you go to different countries. But I was really fortunate that my parents traveled growing up, and we even spent some time in New Zealand. My dad is in academia, and so he had a sabbatical there. So I guess like just the idea that there is something out there was, inspired by them traveling.
Nice.
But otherwise, I owe it all to the internet, honestly.
Yeah, we owe a lot to the internet, don't we? We wouldn't even be talking to you.
Absolutely.
Right. That's awesome. So then you go to Wayland. Now, what, for the audience that don't know what Wayland Academy is, you said it's a boarding school. You were there in high school. When did you come over here? Like when you were 14, 15 years old? Or
16.
16. Okay. And what's Wayland all about?
Absolutely. Wayland is a small boarding school with a lot of international students. I think it's very remarkable just how many countries their students come from. I think at my time there were students from 30-something countries out of like the 200 student population. So very welcoming place, great opportunity for me to learn about American education system and develop a big part of my personality. Yeah,
that's a strange thing. I should probably say this. I sort of grew up in Beaver Dam. I moved there like when I was like 9 or 10, like fourth grade, I think. and then I would, kind of spend my teenage years there. But Beaver Dam's not a huge town. It's like 15,000 people. It's not, but then it has this like random academy in the middle that attracts people from all over the world. And it's just bizarre. Like even growing up there, I didn't really know that much about Wayland Academy. I think I used some of the facilities across the street for sports or tennis or something. But and didn't know that many people from there. But, and probably you're the person, well, obviously my nephews both went there for whatever reason. They're not even from around the world. I don't know why they went there. They're like down the street. But it's cool. And that was probably a great entrance into, America and meeting and kind of eases you in. You got a lot of people there too that are from all over the world. So you're all kind of in the same boat in terms of being in a new country and learning the ropes. You probably bonded with a lot of people there. So yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
And it's very strange because sometimes like you even ask people in Beaver Dam about Wayland Academy and they don't know much. They just know it's like an academy there. But then you see like families across the world who know everything about Wayland because they've been following like their kids going there and really like shaping an informative part of their life.
Yeah.
And usually, when you send somebody from your family, then their cousins want to go there, then other people hear about it too. So
yeah, it is strange because it's like right on the main drag. It's just like it's there all the time, but it's like the secret society behind. I actually played soccer there too. Like they have the soccer field there when I was taking soccer when I was a kid. No, so that's cool. And then you went to college, and where did you go to college? You went to
Ripon College,
Ripon, yeah.
In an even smaller town. But I loved my college experience as well. It was, I think, a great opportunity to like look deep into myself and like really try to discover who I want to be instead of like, I feel like if I was in a bigger city, I would have like just stuck to like one thing happening or like a lot of like hype.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you like those small towns. Small town people. Yeah, no, that's cool. And then so you went there, and what did you major in when you were there?
I started with math and philosophy, and through a couple of things that happened, mainly basically like the philosophy program getting cut, and like them reducing faculty, I just switched to math and physics. But I've always just been, really interested in the way we think, the way we make decisions. And I guess philosophy, physics, math, they all, to me, help you figure out how to think or how to learn.
Right. It makes total sense for you. I haven't talked like you're so inquisitive and you're so like
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean I could see you getting into those topics. And that kind of led you in, but did you know what you wanted to do after college or during college, like where you were headed, or did that just happen afterwards? Because we'll get into now where you are now.
Absolutely.
Was that forming there? Did you have, because tech is a thing now, and we'll get into that, but you weren't thinking tech at college so much.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, a lot of times you don't connect like philosophy with tech, right? But I think seeing like a lot more people in Silicon Valley and seeing how some of them really started college doing philosophy or like being really interested in it makes me think that I think it's a lot about like just having a mindset of, wow, like I think there are fundamental ways that the world should work differently, and wanting to make that a possibility. And I guess right now, like tech is one of the only industries where you could build a product and deploy it to millions of people pretty quickly.
That's interesting. Kind of that common thread of wanting to know how the world works. I don't know what that thing was. How the world works, and kind of like physics too. You kind of, I know in physics people talk a lot about first principles and really being able to understand a problem down to the minute details and that type of thinking, and those two kind of working together too. Just asking a lot. Maybe you learn how to ask a lot of questions and question the world and come up with ideas and stuff like that. That's really cool. And then you moved, and then what was the decision moving to San Francisco? Did you know people out there, or you heard there was a cool crowd out there you wanted to hang out with?
Great question. So, actually, if you had asked me what I wanted to do last year, there would have been no way I could tell you tech. But I basically kind of stumbled into it. I was doing a project for somebody who was working at a startup, and then he started his own startup around September of last year. And he was like, do you want to keep helping us out? And I was like, sure, like, sounds like an exciting project. Kept working for them. And I think just seeing a product come out of like an idea to something that people can use excited me so much that it was hard for me to like do other things in life, or like I would skip meals just to like be able to work on things. So after then, I had like a big conviction that this is what I want to do.
Okay.
And out of big cities that I could have done that in, I first wanted to actually go to like Austin or Boston. I was like, it's cheaper. But then somebody told me like, no, San Francisco is the place. Like the extra money you will spend on rent, food, and everything else will be worth every single penny. And I'm glad I did it. It's really like a special place that way. The concentration of talent is insane.
So that's amazing. You know, anyone that talks about success or being successful in life is surrounding yourself with the right people, with the same mindset, the same kind of level of goals and passion for life and all that good stuff. But that makes a lot of sense. If you're going to go, so yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more, but the value of that and building those relationships is probably going to be far outweigh that extra cost. So that's cool. I mean, it's awesome that you found your tribe in America. That's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think sometimes it's easy to like underestimate how much others really impact you in terms of how you look at the world. And I'm not saying, you know, like it's not possible to have a great tech company in other cities. But I think if somebody wants to work in tech, they at least need to come visit San Francisco.
Okay, I'll be there in a minute.
Seeing the culture.
I'm coming to visit you eventually. You got to stay there
Please
long
do,
enough.
please do.
So, no, that's
That would be amazing.
that's so true, though. It's I think about. I've been kind of stuck in Milwaukee for years, and I think about different opportunities I could have, even in other types of businesses, even like when I was a bartender, like when I was in my 20s, I was a bartender. And I always wondered why I never left here. I could have went to Vegas. I could have went to some big, like where bartending is hot. But no, I stayed in some dive bar in Mequon, Wisconsin. but it's true. I mean, you kind of, you limit yourself to the people you kind of hang around too. It's kind of like a golfer. Like if you golf with somebody that's way better than you, it's going to up your game just naturally. It's just going to happen, organically. And so if you play with somebody that's worse, you might actually play worse. And that's why, like for me, the internet, has been critical for me because for whatever reason, I'm not surrounded in my life by people that are highly successful. A few people have done well, or it's certainly not in tech. I didn't really know anybody. Hang on one second. I'm going to just shut this down. I think I know what's going on. I muted Slack, but there's another Slack channel I belong to that apparently I didn't mute. But yeah, so through just being on the internet, I've met highly successful people that are way beyond our reach, probably until this podcast takes off. But those relationships I've built, and some in person too. I mean, even though you're on the internet, you meet people, you'll travel and you'll go to seminars and do things like that and meet these people. And that's where you really forge those relationships. But that's so it can be done virtually. And especially with Zoom today and just, I've built a lot of great relationships with people. And that's kind of my tribe is more of an online kind of underground, private messaging world where I communicate with people. And, but again, in my real world, my wife can barely use a computer. She can for email, Facebook. Certainly when I start talking to her about what I do, her eyes glaze over. She has no idea. And most of the people in my life, they're doing other things, but yeah, that's good. That's good that you found that. And it sounds like it's having a really positive impact on you. So that's good. Now you have, so one of the benefits of moving to San Francisco is the crowd, but also there must be opportunity there. You've done some interning. I think you say you work for a robotics company over the summer.
Absolutely, yes. I've interned for Novark Technologies. We are automating welding, and the projects I've worked on has been data collection, analysis, sales, marketing, future business directions. So I was a PM intern, which for every company could be a little different, but basically trying to take care of the projects that traditional structures of a company might not want to get distracted with.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interning is interesting because I've never done it myself. I don't know. Again, I don't know anyone in my life that has. Maybe people online, but so that's really, there's opportunities out there for people to. Actually, I work with an agency. They bring in interns. I'm introduced to new people all the time, and it's just an opportunity where you come in, for a specific role or for a specific project just to help out, and they pay you something, I would assume.
Absolutely.
And what's the difference, I guess, between an internship and just a regular job? Is it just the temporary aspect of it, or?
Good question. I think the lines are kind of getting blurred as time goes by.
Yeah.
But the idea of an internship is usually more for career discovery, more for the company and the person to know each other. So I've heard, depending on the company culture, a company might not hire anybody directly to a role, especially college grads. So I think it's mostly implications, I guess.
Okay.
But
cool. And you working with in a robotics company, just the fact that you could say you work for a robotics company, I would love to be able to say that. For unified web design, we'll eventually get into robotics, I'm sure. We'll bring the website to you through. You never know. You never know in 10 years.
Right, design is design.
It could be. Yeah, we could. Who knows what we'll be designing things for? I always think about that. Where is tech going? Where is websites going? Today you look at it, but you can say that about a lot of things in history. But you look at it now, it's what would replace a website? Every business has to have a website, but there's going to be something someday. There's going to, a new type of device or some kind of
metaverse.
A metaverse.
Right. I think I can definitely see online businesses just having a physical location in the metaverse, but not a website or a physical
So what do you say, metaverse?
location in the real world.
Is it like you're talking about like virtual worlds?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to give people more context, there are multiple companies that are working on basically building places where you could use VR glasses to be in and feel like you're in a physical place, but it's all virtual. And from what I know right now, like the biggest hurdle is having good enough of processors on devices to render everything that you would want to see in a virtual world. But I think just seeing, how much companies like Facebook are putting into it, it's a big bet they're making that many people would want to just try their Nike shoes or try their new house in the metaverse before buying it.
Interesting. I never heard that word metaverse, I don't think. That's always like metaverse. Am I hearing that right? No, so you're talking about like how like e-commerce stores and stuff where you don't have to leave your house to try things on, or you can just kind of see it like almost like augmented reality sort of as well. Like you can just have some glasses on and look in the mirror and see yourself wearing something, or maybe it's a virtual mirror.
Absolutely. Completely. Completely virtually. And you wouldn't even have like TVs or any screens because you could just be in that virtual reality and have like a screen in front of you that's showing you something.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Have like dinner with anybody you want to have. You could have millions of people have dinner with like Barack Obama or any other celebrities.
Yeah, it's a great time to be alive. You're just getting,
Right.
between self-driving cars or auto cars and other things like that, where it's like everything's just going to be automated and virtual, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's good times to be alive. So that's awesome. So are you still working for that robotics company, or are you on your next thing?
In 3 to 4 days, my internship will be over. I've been thinking about starting startups, and honestly, within like the last 2 months, I've come up with so many ideas, tried to validate each, see the opportunity, and it's been a really fun process.
So that's interesting. Let's dig into that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Let's segue right into that. So what is that process? So obviously, first of all, when you're thinking about doing a startup, before we get into that, there's a difference between how somebody starts a company. Like, you look at my company, my agency, I bootstrapped it. I've kind of financed it myself for a few years, and now we're scaling up and growing and stuff. But I'm the guy that got her going. But others, go look for financing, look for partners and stuff. Is that more what you think you would end up doing in terms of your startup, that you would go see if you can get funding and do something big right out of the gates?
Absolutely. I think, depending on where you are in life or what type of business you see yourself having, that can be different. There are multiple billion-dollar companies that have bootstrapped themselves and not gotten funding until like very, very mature stages of their business. Like GitHub was bootstrapped. Couple of other really famous brands. I don't exactly remember the names of them. But I think that having a vision or an idea that you think can be really big and taking big risks on it usually requires getting funding, whether that's from individual investors or venture capital firms.
And so it's really comes down to the idea. I mean, if you got a really good idea, you can sell that idea like anything else. And there's people willing to. Where do you go? Just start calling people, cold calling? Yeah, just random people on the street. You want to invest in my company, or is there it's just people through your network, or how do you find those venture capitalists? And people
Great question. It used to be that, capital was just because you needed money, but nowadays I think it's becoming much more strategic. You can use your investors as advisors, and they really play a key role in building your company and even expanding your network. The way I've looked at it, depending on what stage you are, I think VC or individual investors make sense. And individual investors have to be accredited investors because of regulations in the US, which means they have to have a certain amount of salary or wealth. And usually in the beginning stages, as you said, like having that trust or personal connection matters a lot, because they really don't have much to go off of, just that they trust you to do the work.
Because you don't have a track record, especially at your stage. You don't have a track record. You don't have anything you've done that you can say, "Hey, look what I've done," and that was smart. He made a lot of money. Let's do that. So it's people. It is people in your network, or maybe you're referred to somebody that can eventually, a VC that could do something for you or whatever, and you just get in a meeting with them and hope for the best. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I think the funding keeps being pushed to the earlier and earlier stage. It used to be that you needed to have a product, you needed to have customers. But now there are literally venture capital funds that specialize in funding you before you have a product or as soon as you have an idea.
Nice.
Because they just specialize in knowing really good founders.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome.
So it's exciting that way too, because, that takes away some of the barriers of entry.
Right. That's a great opportunity for somebody. There are a lot of people out there with awesome ideas, but they don't have the capital or ability to, or the connections to do something. And that's really great. So how do you generate ideas? How do you, you have, what's your starting point? It's just like, because, there's a lot of things you could do. So you base it on something that, you have experience with, or you've helped others with, or that you just saw on YouTube one day and like, I could do that better. Something like that. Are you looking for something that you could do better, or something that's brand new, never been done before? Talk a little bit about that process.
Absolutely. I think the most, critical moment for me was reading books and talking with people and kind of breaking some of the stereotypes that's around that. So, there are some stereotypes that like college dropout, somebody who might have like industry experience, you have to have like a personal problem you're solving, and a lot of times we hear these stereotypes, and I think they are sometimes pretty harmful. I was fortunate to read a book called Super Founders, and it's written by a VC who basically gathers the data from every startup from 2008 to 2018 who got VC funding and compares them with the ones that became $1 billion. So you have a group of startups that did really well, a group of startups that got funding, so they were significant, but they didn't make it past that. And he basically says, like, age was not an important factor in seeing who made which company or how successful the companies were. Mm-hmm. Industry experience was usually not a factor, except you're in life sciences or biotechnology, where, like, it matters a lot. The other point was that the most important thing is having some sort of experience building things or building a company. So, like, if you're a second-time founder, you usually have a much better chance. And that, to me, just shows that, like, there is not many alternatives to how much you can learn by building a company and trying to get something off the ground.
Just doing it.
Exactly. Which is not to, like, discourage the people who are doing the first time. It's just something you have to learn by mistake. There's no, like, I guess, good movie you can watch.
Right, right. You can go out and find people that you might be able to find people that have done similar or have built businesses, but not your exact flavor of business. Or there's a case for also going to work for other companies that are similar to what you're thinking and learning. There's certain things I've done in my life where I'm the kind of guy that's going to just jump into something and just do it. I have no business doing it.
Right.
I'm just going to learn by failing a lot. And I've done that. And in hindsight, in some of those cases, I'm like, I should have went to go work for a similar business and at least learn the jargon, at least learn, a little bit of how to talk in this business. But in like what I'm doing now, like with my agency, it's been a learning. I never worked for a quote unquote agency before. I sorted it. I was in the insurance business and we called those agencies. But so a similar framework I've worked in, I've done. So an agency to me is natural. From that perspective, I spent years doing that. But at the same time, it's like, I haven't done this specific thing. So the only thing was to just put one foot in front of the other and learn as you go and try different things and see what you can kind of model yourself if you start to interact with other agencies and see what they're doing, how they do things, onboard some of that. You can take ideas from other things you've done. And I love that process. I love, my agency after over 2.5 years now, I've learned a lot. And what I am doing today compared to what I set out to do, it looks a little different. I've had to pivot a few times and try to figure out what my vertical was, what I was going to do with marketing and all that stuff. That just happens. But, sometimes it's just like diving in and doing your thing.
Absolutely.
It seems like that's where you're headed. You want to just dive into something and do it.
Absolutely, yeah. And, as you said, there's a case to be made for working for companies similar to you, fast-paced, so that you can learn some of those skills. But I think experience can both be a blessing and a curse, because having a fresh eye on a problem can sometimes help you not get caught up in the conventions that are made in that industry.
Good point, yeah.
But at the same time, you could make mistakes that would cost you your company.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, so there's different levels of mistakes and failures. You make the small one that feels like failure is great. Yeah, it's great if you don't lose. You're not losing the farm because of it. So that's awesome. So you're hunting for ideas. Are you literally brainstorming? Just you said reading and looking for ideas. Are you talking to people? Do you bring anybody into the loop, like any advisors to bounce ideas off of?
Absolutely. I think one of the most exciting parts is just like having two very different brains. One is the brain where you're like, I could do anything, let's look at these industries. Let's look at what industries have maybe a more legacy structure. Maybe we could break into those better because they haven't innovated yet. But at the same time, you're like, what are the industries that are easier to get into? And you're like, wow, I could do anything. And you come up with all of these ideas. But then on the other end of things, you would have to have this really brutally honest, critical way of looking at things and just kill your ideas as fast as possible. And so that's talking with experts, that's telling people about it, and really talking with your customers. I think that's the most important part of it, because your friends might think it's a great idea or they might think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's how you got to kind of somehow gather input from what would be your potential market or customers or clients or whatever. And that you can have some general idea. I could talk to my agency in the beginning. I had this great idea what I was going to do. And I thought I knew what the client wanted or what my particular vertical needed, but But that changed over time through working with them and through testing and trying different things and in the real world. So rather than you got this educated guest in the beginning, and like you say, you talk to your friends and be like, "That's a great idea. Go do it." But then talk to also other experts, other people that may have, doesn't even have to be direct experience, because some kind of experience that they identify something you never thought of and derails the whole idea.
Right.
I never thought of it that way.
Right. And I think the other part of it is that to have a successful startup, you have to be right about something most people are very, very wrong about. So I think you try to look at many problems in different lens and try to like embrace weird ways of thinking, because, you know, when so many companies started, nobody thought they could be a good idea, or nobody thought they could be as big as they are today. For example, Airbnb, Peloton had very hard time raising their first round, or even Dropbox.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to also like not take an idea because it looks big, or like strike down an idea because it's too small, because sometimes one small change in something can get many more people excited about this. Like Facebook started just being in universities, but seeing the, I guess, seeing like how valuable it was to college students became the foundation,
right,
for expanding it.
Right, and that's there's a lot of stories out there like that, where just launch something and you realize, or they might be just using one feature of what you launched, and that can guide you too. That's pretty cool. And then so looking at ideas, so I talked to somebody yesterday. He's actually on my podcast too, and him and his partner come up with ideas all the time, and they're like, and he was talking about how you just leave your ego at the door. And so they oftentimes they'll come together for brainstorming sessions, talking about, we'll present an idea, and the other guy's like, the partner's like, that's a terrible idea. And it's like, okay. They just, they just trust each other. They have that respect for each other where, like I said, they leave the egos at the door. They're not going to, maybe it'll hurt their feelings a little bit, but then they move on. And that's a great partnership. And it's the same way with taking feedback from other people too. I think it's, you have to onboard some stuff. Sometimes you ignore it. It doesn't mean, I've gotten advice from people that have told me, this is the way you should be doing things. And like, that's a great point. I appreciate that feedback. And you're like, that's not my vision for this, and it doesn't matter. So you got to kind of balance those things. So that's interesting.
And going off of that, I think it's like as much about the outside world and what's happening there as it is about yourself too, because it's usually things that you would want to work on for the next 10 years of your life, or sometimes even longer than that. So I think I've also had that like self-discovery conversations with myself of like, do I really want to do this? Or what type of person would I be if I worked on this problem?
Right. Well, you want to gravitate to things that you can feel like you'd be passionate about, care about, and could, like you said, look at yourself 10 years down the road as, who is that person? I went through that process with the agency. Like, I'm 50 years old now, so this is like my last hurrah. That's it. It's my last thing. I'll be in the grave. No, but I look at the next 10 years. What am I doing in my 50s? Where do I see myself when I'm 60? And I see myself with $1 million agency, right? And I could see myself doing this, building that in the next 10 years. I'm getting there. I'm already
Absolutely.
a six-figure, so we'll get there. So I mean, things are working. Maybe till some derail me. But it's so it's having that. Yeah, that's really, really important, 'cause especially when you get down to the nuts and bolts of actually doing the work. Because I love ideas, and maybe you're like this, dude. I love brainstorming. I'll put ideas and have notes on all kinds of stuff that I want to do, and I love the process of planning it and how to execute on it and do all that. And then you do it, and then you actually have to get to work. And in the beginning, that's good. And I could compare the agency to that, right? In the beginning, it's like you're implementing the plans, and you got your processes, and you figure out what you're doing. You got this big idea, and then you start getting clients, and like, well, you're still excited, and then you get another client, and you start getting busier and busier and busier, and to the point now where now I'm hiring a team, and now I'm like, and so. Now you're kind of, I think that's something you kind of analyze through as you're building a business too. It's like, you have to keep analyzing. Am I still the person I wanted to be? This isn't changing me. I'm not now an angrier person. I'm not fighting with everyone. I still have a good sense of humor. Life is good. Because you don't want to do something, like you said, go down that trail of doing something that, I've always wondered, like, people that like come up with great ideas for like toilet paper or something. They got a new idea around how to create like the best toilet paper. Like, how do you get passionate about toilet paper? Somebody out there is. Somebody's just, they love their toilet paper. You got to be that person. You got to love your toilet paper. Oh man! So I mean, that sounds like it comes into play though with what you're coming up with these ideas, and you're thinking it through. Like, is this who I am? Is this, and if I pursue this, where do I see myself, 5-10 years from now?
Absolutely. And I think the other part of it is that as you're starting out, it's important to focus on very, very few customers and try to make them as happy as possible. I have friends here who, like, with every idea, they find one person, one customer, and they try to give their product, make it literally within a week. Give that to that one customer, get some feedback,
nice,
and see if they could make that one customer really, really happy about what they're doing.
That reminds me of, I had a business partner years ago, like 15 years ago, 16 years ago. I'm an old guy. I've been around. But it's funny when there's people in your life that come into your life. Like, I haven't seen him for 15 years, but there's something he said to me back then that sticks with me to this day.
Wow.
And and he was not anyway. I don't even know what he does anymore. It wasn't like this, guru that I see out there anymore. I don't know whatever happened to him, but he was a smart marketer and had good experience. And we partnered. We built a membership. The first membership I ever built was with him and another partner. And but one of the things he said to me is, we only need 5 or 10 people. We only need to make 5 or 10 people ecstatic, super happy with what we're doing. And they will help us build our business. And so that was kind of the mindset for us going in there. It's like, we're going to build this product, this content. It was more content based, but we were also doing some software and stuff, but the solutions. But it was that kind of core that, and we built a membership, that had hundreds of members, and I ended up, that was like a year and a half project, and then I went off, did my own thing for reasons. And in that membership, same mentality though. Like, I'm going to build product. I'm going to find my avatars that I want to target, and who I'm going to serve, and I'm going to do the best for them, and then find literal people that I'm going to just keep serving and just keep doing awesome things for. And that built a membership. And that membership, we averaged, like 250, 300 active members. Thousands went through that membership over those years. But it was always that mentality. And I think the same way it sounds like that's kind of the same thing you're saying. It's like, just go out and find even just one person, and build something for them and make them happy and get some feedback. And if they love it, then you can do more with it and scale it up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to like, I guess, give you my own opinion of why that's the case, because it's such a weird concept. Because when we're thinking about companies, we're thinking about, how can we serve like good number of people? How can we get a crowd? How can we be valuable to a lot of people?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reason this advice works usually is that if you think about what big companies do, every time, let's say, Google releases a product, you have tens of millions of people using it immediately.
Right.
And I've talked with Google engineers who are like, it's so annoying because when 20 million people are using your product, you can't get any feedback besides like, here are the numbers of users that use it at this time, or like very generic statistics about how your product is being used. But if you could get that like one person to use your product, then you can have tailored feedback that's much more valuable. You can sort of like be really close to your customers.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's sort of what's often done in the internet marketing world is if you, and why a lot of people will start out, launch things the way they do. Number one, they launch things the way they do because it builds urgency and excitement, and like starting out with the pricing low and it's going to be this for 3 days, 3-day promotion, and then we're going to launch it, and a ton of people get in at a low price. But also, what will happen is like when I have a product that I came up with my idea a year and a half, 2 years ago already, and I got the domain. I'm getting the website built right now. So it's happening. I got this great idea. But when I think about the launch, I don't think about just turning it on one day and just putting it out there. And I would love 1 million people to use it, actually. But my process is to first get it in the hands. It serves a specific market, and I already interact with that market. So I choose 5 or 10 people, and I give them access, and I get their feedback, and those will be my first testimonials too. So there's a marketing aspect to it.
I love that.
And so you again with that 5 to 10 people, and then from there, then you maybe find partners to help you launch it or whatever from there. But that's the same thing as like in the beginning. It's like just finding those people that are going to help you. What would you call it? Validate that idea that this is actually good. And I already, before the idea, and part of, I'm not in a rush just because I'm super busy and my current business is insane. This is like a kind of a side project right now, and hopefully it'll become something integrated. But one of the things I do as well with ideas, I just float them, just throw them out there. I have a small list for Hexeter, a few thousand people on that list, and once in a while I'll just float ideas out there and say, I'm working on this. I'll tell them what I'm working on. I've got this idea. We're going to do this, and just see what kind of feedback I have.
I like that.
And I was talking to an agency. We do private label work for them, for their clients, and I was telling them about this product that I'm going to be launching because they could benefit from it. And he just lit up. He's like, I'm so excited. This could be perfect. But that's what you want to. You don't even have to have the product yet. Like you said, you're talking about the ideas and going to VCs, getting capital for your idea before it's even launched. It's kind of the same idea. It's like you don't need to get feedback or after you built the product, or maybe you create a minimal viable product that's something that's simpler and let people play around with that and get feedback. But yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Anything else about that process that you want to share, or we've been going for a while. I think we're past our goal of 45, which is good. So average is 45. We can go an hour. We can go 3 hours.
Absolutely. I guess one other thing, my laptop battery is running low too. So, just one. I guess one last thing that comes to my mind is that One of the biggest thing that I feel like sometimes you have to fight is just fear. And sometimes I find myself like trying to convince myself in my head about an idea much more than it takes to convince other people or even like experts in the industry. And so having like that bias towards doing things helps a lot, because that's how you can learn. And regardless of how much competitive analysis you do, you won't learn about how useful your product is until you launch.
Just do it. Yeah, just take action. Just launch it. That's something we.
Exactly.
We'll leave it at this. So. Hi everybody. We just disconnected for a few minutes. Now we are back in action. So I'm just going to finish up with my thought. We had a little. He was very right about his battery being low. I was going back to, we were talking about launching stuff and just launch it. There was a, back in 2004 or 5, I belonged to some forums back then. Forums were a big thing back then, forum communities. And one of these communities, we'd have threads about marketing. There's actually the Warrior Forum, when it was owned by Alan Sayce. And the Warrior Forum, I remember we were in this thread, and we were talking about just launching stuff. This kind of a similar conversation. Like, don't overthink it. Don't spend your time talking yourself out of something. Just launch it. And I remember I went out and I bought that domain. Let's just launch it. And I was going to create this great product to inspire people and motivate people to just launch stuff. But I got too busy and never did it. I let the domain go. I don't know who owns the domain, but if you have that domain, that's the idea. But it's the same concept. It's a great lesson. It's something that, and the idea doesn't have to be perfectly formed. Doesn't have to be perfect in every way. Obviously, if you're selling it to somebody to give you funding, you probably have to be a little more. It has to be a little more fleshed out. But a lot of times, smaller stuff, and like you said, it doesn't have to be big. It could be just small ideas. You just give that to somebody, see what they think, or So it's cool. It's great lessons. Could talk about this stuff. We could cover a lot of topics. But I'm excited I found a reason to get you on here. That was one of the things. It's funny because for my audience, part of the reason I'm talking to Mohammad today is because of my wife. My wife loves Mohammad. And she's like, you've got to find a way to get him on your podcast. She's a supporter.
No, that's very nice of her. That's very nice.
And I'm like, you're right, but he's got to be a builder. And I do see you as a builder. So I think I have a feeling, I don't know where you see yourself in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You got a long life in front of you, but I have no doubt you're going to be doing some amazing things. So we're going to be watching you, and I'll have you back.
No, thank you, man.
As your journey progresses.
No, thank you, man.
Right.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure talking with you. And I can't wait to see how your content develops over time and how your business keeps thriving.
Yeah, we'll keep creating great content for you to like.
Absolutely, I will always be there.
We'll see you around the interwebs. Take care.
Sounds good, man. Bye.
I wasn't wrong, was I? What a great guy, huh? I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. I am really, really looking forward to seeing what Mohammad does with his life. He's just starting out. I wish I was his age, just starting out, and especially in San Francisco. Like you said, what a great community there. If you're going to do something with your life, surround yourself with people that are doing the things you're doing or have the same passion or same goals. Community is everything. But yeah, so hopefully we'll have more updates from him in the future. I'm sure we'll have him on again to keep tracking him, at least like once a year, right? Just to see, hey, Mohammad, what's up? What are you building? If you like this content, if you like listening to entrepreneurs, business owners, people building stuff on the web, building services, products, agencies, you name it. If you're building something, if you're building something, if people are building something, if you're interested in building something, please subscribe, because we're going to have a lot more content related to that. That's what The Builders is. It's about people building stuff on the web, building all that stuff. And we'll have more entrepreneurs on, more business owners, more of this type of content. I hope to see you next time. Subscribe, hit that like bell. Oh no, you got to hit the bell and you got to do the like and subscribe. Hey, I'm new to this. I'll figure it out. I'll get my spiel together eventually. All right, I'm going now. Have a great day.